This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Most Valuable Promotions and Netflix are hosting a blockbuster triple headliner Saturday, May 16th. Ronda Rousey returns to face fellow women's MMA pioneer Gina Carano in the main event. Plus co-mains Nate Diaz versus Mike Perry. And the best heavyweight in the world, Francis Ngannou versus Felipe Lins. Watch Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano, live only on Netflix. Saturday, May 16th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Get 2 times membership rewards points per dollar on eligible purchases in key business categories, as well as on each eligible purchase of $5,000 or more, on up to $2 million in eligible purchases per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
No one goes to Hank's for his spreadsheets. They go for a darn good pizza. Lately, though, the shop's been quiet, so Hank decides to bring back the $1 slice. He asks Copilot in Microsoft Excel to look at his sales and costs and help him see if he can afford it. Copilot shows Hank where the money's going and which little extras make the dollar slice work. Now Hank has a line out the door. Hank makes the pizza, Copilot handles the spreadsheets. Learn more at m365copilot.com/work.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
At the Musial with Alan and Daniel, we'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good evening. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shopta at C70. Thought we were going to have Alan Medlock back in the seats this week, but Alan had a chance to do a few family things tonight, and I don't figure he's had much opportunity during the baseball season to do that. So we'll give him another week of vacation time. We've got Eugene Tucker in for him. Eugene writes at Portion Under Busch. Eugene, how are you doing tonight?
Great. Thanks for having me back. Really excited. It was such a fun time last time, and so really feeling very honored to be back.
Yeah, it was a good time to, and you're doing so much good stuff over there at Portion. You had the Albert Pujols almost shrine, I guess, earlier in the year. A lot of interesting posts about the now Cardinal Hall of Famer. How is things going at the Substack?
It's going well. It's always one of those things where life gets in the way when you're getting on a good run. And so, but yeah, we just did. We like to publish quarterly, and so this past quarter we did the Albert Pujols 25th year anniversary, looking at his top 10 home runs and kind of just a retrospect of how lucky we've been as a fan base to get to see somebody who, one of 4 people ever to hit 700 home runs. Yeah. And then next quarter coming up, we're going to look at the theme of the issue is it's going to be called God Suppressed to Become Devils. And the idea behind it will be that while St. Louis has been baseball heaven to many, it's been baseball hell to others, and maybe made us feel like we were in hell watching certain players. And so we'll look at some of those players who maybe didn't have the most fun in St. Louis, We're going to have articles about Colby Rasmus, J.D. Drew, Kip Wells, and Brendan Ryan, to name a few.
I would say it feels like it's the Tino Martinez episode is what that feels like to me.
There is one where we will liken Tino Martinez to the poem Ozymandias, if anybody remembers that one, where
that's an interesting one.
Look upon my works in despair.
Right.
A lot of that during the Tino days.
Yeah, Tino didn't really know what to make out of leaving New York. He never really wanted to, and I guess is back in that area, except when he's doing Car Shield commercials. But
well, that's the funny thing, because I had forgotten about this, and I saw it on just when I was researching for it, is that he replaced Don Mattingly in New York. And
oh, really?
Yeah. So replacing one franchise icon, and then coming here, obviously being the McGuire replacement.
Yeah.
They're probably, everybody kind of assumed that lightning was going to strike twice. And if you put yourself back in that 2001 era where, it had been 19 years since the last World Series, and the team and Jocketty and LaRusso really thought that he was going to have that Yankee magic and kind of push him over the edge.
And I mean, I'm sure he wasn't their first choice, because they would have liked Will Clark. Well, Clark was 2000, so I guess there was a year gap there, wasn't there?
Yeah, Clark came when McGuire got hurt during 2000,
right? And
I think he retired after that.
Yeah.
After that season.
Yeah, I was thinking it was that was the overlap, but it wasn't. There was an extra year there. So yeah, I mean, there was that idea that was probably very similar to some of the other ones we've seen, of maybe Dexter Fowler or others that seemed like a good idea, seemed like the best player on the market for that position. It just didn't quite mesh with the club. Now, I think maybe with Tino, I think like Dexter Fowler, I think he tried, it just didn't work out. Right. But
yeah,
not everybody can be a Cardinal, I guess.
Right. I think that's right. And Jeff Jones, friend of the pod, I know, he wrote a great article for us last year on Dexter Fowler. And, that was kind of his point, was both player and team had to do it, but I don't think either player or team wanted to do it. I think Dexter Fowler would have rather stayed in Chicago and kind of continued chasing the repeat. I think the Cardinals, and Jeff says this in his article on this, is that they were going after now his name just escaped me. There was he was the center fielder for the Nationals, and then he ended up getting traded to the
Adam
White
Eaton,
Sox.
right?
Adam Eaton, exactly.
Yeah.
Adam Eaton, and so it was kind of everybody's second choice, and then the money and the years were just too good for everybody, and it just it didn't work out. And with Tino, I think that he probably started getting a little annoyed that the fans here didn't give him maybe the respect that he probably had earned in pinstripes, because we just didn't see it here.
Yeah. It's very interesting, because both of those situations, one more than the other, could have been just avoided if the Cardinals had trusted what they had. If they had just gone ahead and moved Pujols to first base after McGuire left, or if they had realized, what Tommy Pham was going to be, at least, in the short term, they could have ridden that out, but they didn't necessarily. I mean, one, they had the pressures of, you got to win now. You can't necessarily put a lot of the weight on unproven players, but it's just very interesting that it's so often that a team, and that Cardinals probably were burned by it a number of times, has gone out to try to find a solution that they already have in house.
Yeah, that's a good point. And probably the other thing with not going with Pham is they didn't want to spend all the money on the weight equipment yet. They were waiting for it to go on discount.
I didn't want that treadmill. I mean, I've seen Tommy Pham on that treadmill recently. That's a fancy treadmill. There's no doubt about it. But got to cut costs where you can.
So do you have? Let me ask this: do you have a player that you would say was your, I won't say least favorite, but not favorite to watch when they were in St. Louis, so that you kind of groaned every time they came to to the plate or towed the rubber?
I don't know. You mentioned Kip Wells, which is very funny because Kip Wells is part of my blogging origin story.
Oh,
Because it was 2007. Cardinals had been off to a obviously a slow start. Carpenter getting hurt opening day. Things were not good, but they'd started to pick up a little bit right after the All-Star break. And it looked like Chris Carpenter might be coming back and all this kind of stuff. And they go into the first game after the break, and Kip Wells gives up like four runs in the first inning, and all the momentum's gone. And that's when I started writing the blog. So that's 19 years this summer. So Kip Wells has a lot to answer for many people, and that is part of it. There have been people, especially relievers, that you're like, oh, here we go again, type of thing. But none of them are that important. I feel like some degree to have a real distaste for a person, it has to be kind of a person that plays regularly, right? Because if it's like we see nowadays, and we'll talk about it because he hit a home run now. A lot of people have that about Pedro Pages, right? He's he's blocking Jimmy Crooks. He's not doing anything. Why is he here? Every time he comes up, people just kind of sigh and roll their eyes. And I think that if he's playing once a week, nobody cares, right? If he's playing under Yadi or Molina, nobody cares because it's, we hardly ever see him. But in this era, because he's playing almost every day, or at least 60% of the time, that kind of angst gets stoked a little bit more often.
I can see that, and I think. Do you think part of it too with Pages especially is that and you mentioned Jimmy Crooks, but there are just so many catchers,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it's almost like you said, just pull the trigger with Herrera, or just figure out something else. There seems like there are plenty of other options at this point, and I know it's funny. That's one of the things I took my kids to the ball game when the Mariners were in town. So
mm-hmm.
we talk about Pages, but we could have Cal Raleigh. How horrible would that be to have him going through his stump? But we took it, and it was funny, and I kind of caught myself because I love watching the Cardinals, and I'll always be a fan. But you make, like you said, some of those snide remarks every time, and I caught my son doing it too. Of like, oh, here comes Gorman's probably going to strike out, or those type of things, and you're like, oh boy, I got to be careful. I don't want to raise a cynical Cardinal fan, because it is fun. It should be fun to watch, and you got to have faith in it.
Yeah,
but he's the same way with Pages. He knows I'm not the biggest Pages supporter. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, I'm always like, if they're wearing the red, the birds on the bat, I'm at least going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that has just been a guy that I just, continually bash on. I don't feel like, I've gotten I feel like sometimes I do that with Nolan Gorman, but I don't necessarily want to. I would like to see Nolan Gorman be at least an approximation of what we thought Nolan Gorman was going to be. And there's still time for that. I don't think there is a lot of, is it ever going to click? But every once in a while it clicks, and it's fun to watch. But I can't think of. You picked so many good ones in there with all those guys. JD Drew would have probably been one that you mentioned him, and a guy that, and I think he was more, to me, just not expressive. It wasn't that he didn't like it here, or all that kind of stuff. It was just more that just wasn't his personality, and we tend to ascribe malcontents to just stoics.
And I think JD Drew is fascinating, and I always like JD Drew, and I think I still remember reading my sporting news when the draft was coming, and they were saying that the Cardinals were gonna, they projected him to go in the draft, and that this was the next Mickey Mantle, and I was so excited. And he debuted during McGuire's 60-second home run.
Yeah.
And if you go back and watch that game, I mean, Joe Buck just is effusive in his praise of JD Drew and that this is the next superstar in baseball. And I think it's fascinating because everyone put those expectations on him.
Mhm.
And if you look at it, all JD Drew wanted to do was make money and play baseball, and he did it. And is it really his fault that he wasn't the next Mickey Mantle? No, nobody ever asked him, "Do you want to be the next Mickey Mantle?" No, I just want to play baseball and make money and then retire and not think about it. And that's and so it's the gods need to lower their expectations sometimes too, I guess, is the
Yeah.
theme of the JD Drew piece.
Yeah. And I think, for so many of us, if we see anybody else in the world that is just obsessed with their job, we look at them sideways, right? And we talk
Yeah.
about work-life balance, and we talk about, you need to, maybe ease back a little bit and not, spend 15 hours at the office or something like that. But if baseball players do that, then we think they're lazy bums. And, how dare you try to, see your family instead of going to work out a couple more times so that you can hit that ball, a tenth of a mile faster.
Yeah. And it's, and it is, I think too, especially in St. Louis, I can't obviously talk about other markets, but the the connection between the team and the fan base and how many, people wanted to grow up and be a Cardinal. And I'm sure, I say that it's not like it's a St. Louis thing. I mean, every team
Right.
has that portion. So I shouldn't say it's solely to St. Louis, but and I think that it's like, boy, you're one of the lucky few that got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So you better you better give it your all.
Yeah.
If my genetics were better, I would have done it. And so, that kind of thought process.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Absolutely. I mean, we do think that, but I just, because it really felt like, that does feel like the difference between Colby Rasmus and JD Drew, right? It
Sure.
just never felt like Colby Rasmus was all that excited about baseball and anything. It just wasn't, he didn't know what else to do, and he could hit a ball. So that's the way to make money. Whereas Drew was, again, not necessarily, just a raw guy, but he did seem to enjoy it. And I think that kind of bears out in how long they played and how the results they both had.
Mm-hmm. And and the other fascinating aspect, again, and I think it's with Colby Rasmus and also Brendan Ryan, and reading more about it, is I think a thing that we forget as well, being fans. And you mentioned that this is a job, the sense that you have to work with people 162 days of the year. And
Right.
when I had forgotten, and going back and reading this, that, I think it was Pujols who basically went to La Russa and said, you got to get rid of Rasmus before 2011. And like, we don't want him on the team. And, La Russa's telling, so was telling the story. So he may, have been a little, put himself in, and he was the one. La Russa said, you have to give him a chance. We can't win without him. And that, but they just that it can grate, working with coworkers, it can grate on you sometimes, those personalities. And then Brendan Ryan was the same way. And there was actually a pretty interesting quote in the paper after he left. It was an anonymous, but somebody said, you could put up with it if he's hitting 300, but when he's hitting 210, it gets really old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he used to do like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino impressions and Harry Carey impressions, and you can just put yourself, especially if people remember back in that 2010 era, when the team kind of had the letdown after, in September and didn't make it, and you're just tired and you're hurt, and the guy's doing a Harry Carey impression next to you in the cubicle, and you're like, oh my God, I can't be here anymore. I can't do this. So
yeah, I easily, and you're right. I mean, and it's just, reading a room to some degree too, right? I mean, you're right. Anytime you're having success, you can get away with a lot more. But we see people like Yohel Pozo now, who obviously have good rapport in the clubhouse, good guys, even though they're not doing much. But they seem to understand, understand what they can get away with and what they can't,
Right.
because of their spots versus something that, as if whatever Jordan Walker wants to do right now, I think Jordan Walker could do.
Yeah. What was it? I saw that on Twitter that was that Pozo who tweeted the picture of like Homer Simpson
Hmm.
cozied up. What I didn't get that reference. Did something?
It's like it was. He said happy flight. I think it was right after the A's game,
Oh,
basically that they would
okay.
sleep well tonight.
Oh, okay.
After a come from behind win like
Yeah,
that.
that was a great win. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And then very interesting. I mean, it's been a week, right? I mean, that saw the Cardinals go from losing a game that they led up to the last strike to then
Yeah.
winning a game that they were losing at their last strike. I mean, you don't see a lot of those kind of games flip anyway, but to see it twice in 1 week going both ways, I mean, I think it kind of reiterates a lot about this team in that it is going to be interesting no matter how the game is.
Couldn't agree more. And I I did not have high expectations going into this year. I think my goals were I hope they don't lose 100 games,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I hope they avoid prolonged losing streaks. Um, and it's fun now that you have a game like that one in San Diego on Sunday, and I didn't think I'd be that upset about a loss. Not upset, but like, oh
Right.
boy, like, how do we let that one get away? And you're at least I'm already standings watching a little bit and being,
Mm.
saying like, oh, we don't want to lose too much ground here. And never in a million years would I have guessed that as we approach Memorial Day, that would be my mindset. And I know part in the back of my mind, I know they're going to regress at some point, but I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm just going to enjoy it.
And I agree. Excuse me, I took a I agree that they are likely to regress. I really, we don't know that this could keep up, but at the end of April, we were saying the same thing, right? In the,
Sure.
after the first 2 weeks of the season, we were saying the same thing. Here we are. The Cardinals are guaranteed to play 500 ball or better through 50 games. And that's not a small sample, right? I mean, that is over a third of the, or a quarter of the way through. So I don't know. I mean, it's getting closer to a third by that point in time. Yeah, everything could fall apart, but it feels like this team. I don't know. I don't know what it is about this team necessarily, but maybe you do. That feels so much different for the fact that we have so many of the same people in the same positions.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You know those friends who support your preference for podcasts over music on road trips? That's the energy State Farm brings to insurance. With over 19,000 local agents, they help you find the coverage that fits your needs, so you can spend less time worrying about insurance and more time enjoying the ride. Download the State Farm app or go online at statefarm.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Could AI help you do more of what you love? Workday is the AI platform for HR and finance that actually knows your business. We help you handle the have to dos so you can focus on the can't wait to dos. It's a new Workday.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. It has been such a revelation though. And whatever Jordan Walker did on that little spring training break, I hope he bottled it.
Yeah.
That's a good retirement plan on being able to sell that secret. But even tonight, they're down 2-0, and Dustin May's walked, his 3 walks already, and it's looking down. But when Jordan Walker came up, and I know it already happened, so you may not believe it, but I was like, I kind of had faith he was going to hit a home run, and that was not last year.
No.
Last year, Jordan Walker comes up with 2 outs and a man on. I'll get ready to go to the pantry for the mid inning snack.
Right.
And now I have no doubt even if it's not a home run, he's going to hit it hard somewhere. And I think it is JJ Weatherholt is, you inject that youth and that excitement, and I would even say McGreevy has been so much fun to watch. And I think if you leave this season with Jordan Walker as an all-star, knock on wood, I don't want to jinx anything, but
Right.
and McGreevy is somebody that you can see as being a number 2, a number 3 starter in a division champion caliber team. Those are two good building blocks. Then you add Weatherholt and you add Burleson, who's doing his thing, and it's looking pretty good for the future. Herrera, I don't want to leave him out.
Yeah. Yeah, the top of the lineup has been very, very successful. The bottom of the lineup has been less so at times. But even
Yeah,
then, you've had, the research or the, I don't know, it's coming out party is probably not the right word, but Nathan Church has been a lot better than I thought. I wrote him off as a fourth outfielder at best, but he has not necessarily continued that stretch that he had for a week or two, but he's definitely shown that he can play regularly at the major league level.
Well, I agree, and I know Bernie was kind of tweeting about it a couple days ago, so I don't want to steal his thunder. And of course, um, Victor Scott homered yesterday after he said it, but
Right.
I was starting to wonder if when Newt Bar comes back, if Victor Scott is the odd man out, and
Mhm.
the outfield is Church, Newt Bar, Walker. But I just feel bad because I love watching Victor Scott, but it's just
Right.
not translating.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine it's not that, right? Or at least some sort of timeshare between the two in center. Because I mean, Church has done enough. I mean, he's done a lot more it was very great to see Victor Scott hit a home run yesterday. And I know it must have felt like, taking 3 elephants off his back. But Victor Scott needs to be hitting balls, hitting line drives and getting on base and stealing bases. And, he'll hit if he hits the occasional home run, that is great, but I don't want him up there looking for it. And so far, it just, I really expected a lot out of him this year. I thought he would just kind of run with, no pun intended, run with things. And it hadn't been there. And I feel like he's got more capabilities than what we've seen.
I agree, and it's just, but you're 100% right. You can't be that disruptor on the base pass if you don't get on the bases.
Right.
So the bunting was fun, but I feel like everybody's kind of figured that out now, and he's not surprising people, and he's just not getting
Right.
it. He's not getting there.
Yeah. And then, of course, Newt starts his rehab tonight, hits a home run in his first at bat. So everybody gets fired up about that. And if Newt Bar could play at the levels that we've seen, and it's possible he plays more. I mean, he's not hurting right now. But if he can play at the levels we've seen and you slide him into the 5th or 6th spot in this lineup, it gets longer, right? I mean, that becomes a little bit more interesting with a Lars Newbar in there.
And it does make you wonder. And I've seen other people on Twitter say this, so I don't want to steal or plagiarize, but it does make you wonder if the front office, because I think this has surprised the front office as well as it surprised all of us. But if it makes you wonder, like if they ever think like, man, we should have put some more effort into the bullpen, then we could have. That'd be a completely different story going ahead.
Maybe. I mean, they did. I mean, some of the moves that they did make, George Siriano has looked good.
Yes, I do. I enjoy him. Although he just gave up a single to Bobby Witt here, and he's coming out of the game. But
well, I mean, it's Bobby Witt Jr. What are you kidding?
I was going to say, it's not the first one to give up a hit to Bobby Witt.
No. Just Soriano has looked good since they got him. And I mean, going into this season, I don't think anybody would have expected Matt Swanson to regress as much as he has. And Ryan Stanek was always kind of a wild card. Again, no pun intended. Because you hoped that they could make. I'm sure they had an idea that they could find something, and he goes through spurts. We just saw a 5 or 6 or 7 outing appearances without a run or something of that nature before a little bit of a struggle yesterday. There are moments where he looks like a very reliable piece. Unfortunately, it's just not as consistent as we would like.
Well, and to be fair, that is exactly what the front office, the plan was. I have to assume is that you have these guys, you pitch them, and they have, if they're bad, well, there's no harm done. We're a rebuilding year. But if they are stellar, then you build them up for trade deadline pieces and you flip them for something. And it really is kind of, it was a solid plan. And at the beginning of the year, it looked like a win-win proposition. It's just that, as we all know, there's been a lot of losses left on the table because we haven't been able to get those 3 outs, or close games become not so close games due to a blow up inning.
Yeah, there definitely has been some of that. Although it feels like, I mean, there were, obviously there was a game this week that stands out, but it does feel like maybe that's been a little bit lesser, and maybe it's because the starters are going a little bit longer. It feels like nobody's going past 6, but it feels like a lot of those starters are getting to the 6 more. Again, not running the numbers. It's just totally anecdotal on what I'm thinking, but McGreevy goes 6 fairly regularly. We saw Dustin May go 6 tonight. And he's gone 6 a number of times. Matthew Liberatore's still not getting there, and I guess maybe the other two are, but it just feels like as of late, maybe they haven't had to tax the bullpen quite as much.
No, and even if it's not going 6, and again, I'm, people can comment if I'm, but it does not seem like we're having, again, purely anecdotal, having the starters give up a ton of runs in the 5-6 innings that they're pitching.
Right.
Like that when we're turning it over to the bullpen, we're obviously not always winning, but it's a game still. That's at least that's how it's felt to me, is that the pitchers are doing their job. I mean, you're going to have, you're going to let up 3 runs in outings, and I know what McGreevy let up 4 yesterday, maybe, or not yesterday, but one of his starts, but or Liberatore, I guess, was let up 4.
Liberatore did. Liberatore gave up the grand slam.
Right. That's the one I'm saying. But it's not, it's not the end of the world starting pitchers that happens. But I do feel like they've been in games. The starters have kept us in games. I guess that's my main point.
Yeah, they have. And it's just also a testament to this team. It kind of loops back to where we started this. It's a team that has a fire about it that I don't feel like we saw as much last year, right? If they were down 2 or 3 runs last year, you just didn't feel like anything was going to ever come about of it. And it feels like now they get down 2 or 3 runs, kind of like you said tonight, when Walker comes up and you had a feeling he was going to hit a home run. There's enough offense here that they can score 2 or 3 runs pretty quickly, especially if somebody in that bottom of that lineup gets you a kind of an unexpected hit. It just feels like, again, you're never out of it if you're down, and you're never comfortable when they're ahead.
Yeah.
But it's a different energy. I mean, it feels weird to say that, and there's really no way to measure it, but just watching this team is a lot different than it was over the last couple of years.
I agree. It's been fun, and it makes you excited for the future too.
Yeah, it does. And then, because you think about, I mean, the Cardinals have draft picks this year, and we'll see how they do with those. But, you've got a couple of pitchers that are already making their name, that are starting to knock on the door. Nobody's quite ready yet. Although, Hunter Dobbins made an appearance. We'll probably see him again pretty soon.
And that was a great outing. That was fun to watch against Skeens. Yeah.
Kind of tapered off at the end, but that wasn't surprising.
He hit that 5th inning wall that we're just talking about.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, he'd pitched 4 or 5 games at the minor league level. I mean, it's not too surprising that they're going to run into some of that. So, and I'm going to be very interested to see when they bring him back up. Right? I mean, I don't know that there's any more of those 17 games in 17 days stretches, or at least not for a while. When do they try to, do they worry about making a change in the rotation? Because that's the other part of this, right? It's going to be a bit difficult for Chaim Bloom, because it's like, I'm going to ride Kyle Leahy because we said all winter he's going to be a starter. And even though the Cardinals, this team is winning more, I can't pull the plug on that.
No, it's a good problem to have. I think there's probably one pitcher in the rotation that could maybe afford to miss a few starts, but with the initials AP. But it's a good problem to have.
And even
it reminds me too that from the durability so far of the 2005 pitching staff, obviously not the same caliber team, but I think it was 2005. I think that they only had like 6 guys make starts that entire season.
Was it 05? I knew there was a year. I couldn't remember which year it was, but yeah, that basically everybody. I think somebody made a start. Yeah, late in September. Otherwise, it would have been.
Yeah, I think it was just
also.
like Brad Thompson and Cal Eldred were the only everyday starters that got.
Well, and then you look at last year, right? Fetty got released, and that was about it. That was about the only McGreevy took his spot, and that's really all it. They didn't have any injuries in the rotation last year, and I mean, I know the Cardinals have talked a lot about trying to minimize workloads and injuries and how they do things is kind of with an eye on that. And you'd like to think they figured something out, except for all the people that keep getting hurt in the minor leagues. And you figure, why is it not working there?
Hasn't filtered down yet. Yeah.
Right. I guess maybe that's the case. But it has been interesting to see a team and almost, like they said, last year they had to, because there wasn't anybody available to come up. This year there's Dobbins. They were hoping for Fitz. Obviously he's out for the year.
Mm-hmm.
But you could have somebody if you needed to. And I think it's just going to be interesting to see how long, this run of health goes. And hopefully it's a long time.
Definitely.
Yep. So obviously Jordan Walker is the big surprise of the year. Is there anybody else that really stands out as a guy that is doing a lot more than you expected?
Well, I think you named the one, Nathan Church, which has been really fun to watch him play. Although he just bunted foul and struck out with Mason Wynn on second, so I've jinxed him there. But and it's not just he's had the power surge, but the plays in the outfield have been so amazing. I mean, that catch he made in Pittsburgh to end the game,
mm-hmm.
and that wasn't even the first one. That might not even been the best game-saving home run he's had this year. And so it's just I've really enjoyed watching him play. I think it's fun to see Burleson grow into that team leader. I'm thinking of he was kind of when Weatherholt got his first hit and home run on opening day, putting him in the shower and kind of they posted that, and you could tell he was kind of the leader of the team a little bit. And I think that's fun to see people take that, to see him especially take that mantle, because I do enjoy watching him play. He's a big burly guy playing first base. What's not to like?
Yeah, and Nathan Church bunting with a runner on second and nobody out with Pajes and Scott behind him. He deserves to get out.
Right.
That was not the wisest of options.
Was this bring Mike Matheny back day or something?
Yeah. I don't know how much that was on the player and how much that's on the manager to some degree. Yeah. And that's another thing. It feels to me not everybody's still on the Marmol bandwagon, but it feels like the criticisms of him have tempered quite a bit now. I mean, winning does that, right?
I was going to say, it's funny what winning can do with that, right?
Yeah. But I wonder if even even if they were playing, 500 ball or slightly thereunder, if it would be because of what this season is supposed to be and the development that's supposed to be, if there would still be a little bit less of a we got to get rid of this guy mentality because you're not expecting to win.
Yeah. And, you and I have talked about this in the past too, that we're old enough to remember that when the pitchforks and the torches were out to run La Russa out of town,
mm-hmm. Right.
Back in 2001, 2002, that he didn't have it and he was never going to get him over the hump. And, I think that there is, of all of the sports, I think baseball, the managers probably play the least critical role of the major sports just because there's not enough time to do practice and really, implement game plans and things. And I think it was Fire Joe Morgan, if people remember that site from back in the mid 2000s.
Oh yeah.
Where Mike Sure said that he always envisioned managers or analogized them to kind of sheep herders. You just
mm-hmm.
you lead the flock to the main goal, and that is your job, not to get in anybody's way, not to screw it up. Now, I think that Mike Matheny, maybe he had that, but he had that sheep herder mentality, but I think he kept getting in his own way a lot. We always saw with the, I remember Jen Lagosche saying one time, like, he refuses to figure out how to do the double switch.
Yeah.
And, and I remember Derek Gould writing about how the team literally had to trade Alan Craig to get him to write Oscar Taveras' name in the lineup. So, so with Marmol, I've always been remembering the early LaRussa ages, not saying he is LaRussa, but I've always had a little more patience for him. Because it's, you can only play the cards you're dealt. And I don't think he was responsible for Goldschmidt and Arenado regressing as quickly as they did in between 22 and 23.
No, and that was the biggest thing, right? I mean, for him, and I mean, 22, the whole Ryan Helsley injury finger thing. If that team goes farther, how much more leeway does he get with 23? Sure. I mean, there's a lot of ifs in alternate universes that you could explore. But yeah, I think that they put the team together the last couple of years. They knew their flaws, they knew the weaknesses, they knew the depth that wasn't there, but they had some star talent, and the star talent didn't necessarily, rise to the occasion. And I mean, there's not really nothing you could do as a manager except for, just keep trying to find a trick that might kick them into gear.
Comcast is delivering extraordinary experiences in live sports. Through the incredible broadcast and storytelling from NBC, innovative and personalized viewing features on Xfinity and Peacock, and the country's most reliable Wi-Fi, viewers can enjoy every game-changing play faster and more seamlessly than ever. All on a network built to deliver unforgettable moments as close to live as possible. The ultimate experience for the American sports fan. Learn more at ComcastCorporation.com/sports.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Yeah, I have a funny story that I'll tell. I'll change names, but I heard a story about Arenado. Again, I don't know if this is true, but if you remember, he had that baby around 22, 23, and
yeah.
I know somebody who saw him out for a walk, and they asked him how he was doing, and he said that the baby was struggling to sleep, and it was one of those things that it reminded me of when I had my kids, and how tough it was on some of those nights to wake up and do my email job. And I cannot imagine trying to hit a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. You can only imagine too, with the amount of travel they do, the home life of, oh, you're on the road again, and here I am with the baby. And so, ball players, they're just like us.
That's right. And we do forget that they do have some of those extra stresses and stuff. And it's been good to see that, at least for a while, that Arenado seems to have had a different approach. It has had some different results in Arizona this year. I mean, I think that I don't know that there's too many Cardinal fans that wish him ill, right? I mean, there were a lot of people that thought he needed to go and it was time to move on, but I think everybody still wants to see him do the best he possibly can.
I agree. And obviously, and it's one of those things that the winning didn't come. We didn't win as much as we all thought we were going to on that Friday night when he was traded, but they did win. I mean, they made the playoffs twice.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's who knows what happens if Helsley tells Marmol I have a blister, or if Marmol just pulls him out anyway, or who knows. But those years with him here were fun. We got to see Scott Rowland and Nolan Arenado, and that's a pretty neat little run of third baseman for Cardinal fans.
Yeah. I think, and I mean, to watch those two has been amazing. And I guess maybe that's the most surprising thing this year is the fact that Nolan Gorman is an above average third baseman all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Defensively, I don't know how that happened, but it's pretty interesting to watch.
Save maybe that play the other night. Was that him? That was him at third the other night, right? With the Ole.
Yeah, the first for the guy that that was his first major league hit
Yeah.
for the A's. Yeah, I was like, that didn't look good, but that's gonna happen. Um, so Hein Bloom, and we've seen some comments this week and that people keep pushing Heim to say, and I'm sure that here in 2 weeks when we get up to Blogger Day, we'll have some of the same questions. But the idea of what happens at the trade deadline. Now we've still got 2 months to go before then, but if this team's going even somewhat close to this level, what do you want to see Hein Bloom do at the trade deadline?
I've been going back and forth on that because I've seen it a lot. It seems like Riley O'Brien is the main trade talk already of because obviously coming out of nowhere, and I shouldn't say nowhere, but he's had such a great season as the closer, and that would you trade him now, and especially with what we experienced with Helsley and even a little bit JC Romero,
Right.
with you trade him at his height. I have always been one to say, let's go for it. I feel lucky that I went for so long in my life thinking the Cardinals were never going to win the World Series to the fact that I've seen 2 now. I'm content. And I just love going to the playoff games. To me, obviously I want them to win the World Series and experience that with my kids. Like I was able to experience it with my dad, but the opportunity to make the playoffs, to win the division, I'm not interested in, well, let's trade them off and in the future we'll be better. I don't like that approach, kind of that Astros approach, and because who knows what the future is going to bring with this, and who knows who's going to get hurt or who's not going to come through. I mean, again, a different front office, but we've had how many times have we seen recently where we released somebody and their responses, and that was the last player that arrived in the Jack Flaherty trade.
Right. Zach Showalter this week, yeah.
Or the Harrison Bader trade. And now, and so if you're in a position, I say go for it. I love the fact that the Cardinals have more NL Central titles than anybody else. I worry, and this is a silly thing to worry about, but I don't want to be behind the Dodgers in World Series title. I've always loved the fact that the Cardinals were always number 2 behind the Yankees, and I think we're behind the Dodgers now in NL pennants. But so I any opportunity you get where you're going to make it to the dance, and who knows what'll happen, I say roll the dice, and we'll worry about tomorrow.
I mean, there's a lot to be said for that, because tomorrow never comes, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I get that. I've also, again, you look at this team and as much fun as and fun excitement it is, it does feel like a team that's playing over his head.
Oh, sure.
And I don't know, I mean, it would take going out and getting like a legitimate ace, and that's giving up players that they don't want to give up. I think that, it's obviously going to be easier if the Cardinals are under 500 or they're 7 games out of the wild card, and you don't worry about it. You can trade O'Brien and Newt and Dustin May and everybody like that, and try to stock back up. But if they're still hanging around, I think Hein Bloom has a tightrope to walk, because he is going to be continuing to look at the future. I mean, he said that from his very first press conference, that he was going to focus on long-term gains versus short-term gains. But I also think that you can't just come in and take a wrecking ball to a team that's 7 or 8 games over 500 in July either, which may mean holding on to Riley O'Brien when you didn't necessarily want to.
I think that's fair, and and is there something to be said of, because I agree, looking towards the future, and I'll go. I love Mason Wynn. I think Mason Wynn's great, but I don't think if Mason Wynn is your 4th place, 5th place hitter, it's
Right.
probably not a World Series winning team. No offense to Mason Wynn or anything like that, but that's the reality of it. And so, you know, but I guess is there something to be said too about the timeline moves up, and even if this isn't a World Series team and we agree we were playing over our heads, that it gives these players just that postseason experience that maybe they build on that later, and it's and I we've just talked about all the psychological aspects of it, and the Tony La Russa men not machines, but if you are, like we're saying, around 500, a little more, and all of a sudden everybody goes, is that a message to everybody else that you're on the chopping block too? Or I don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would have to be solid messaging, right? And that is a difficult thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm and I'm one that I wanted them to trade Helsley the trade deadline before they did, because I felt like 24, even though they were hanging around, that wasn't a team that was going to go anywhere, and you could have maximized your return. And in retrospect, they probably should have, but you can't play it in retrospect either. You got to do what you think of the future. And so I don't think Heim expected to be in such a straitjacket this early, right? And so I'm going to be very interested to see how he can stay the course while not rocking the boat.
Well, and the other thing too that I always wonder, and again, being the nostalgia guy that I am, is that I wonder too if fans sometimes, if we have a skewed thought of what we can get, what the team can get from the trade deadline.
Oh, absolutely.
The fact that we've, not even, you don't have to go that far back for Arenado or Goldschmidt, but, McGuire, Holiday, Larry Walker, all of these Hall of Fame Red Jacket players, even Edmonds, who I think Adam Kennedy ended up being the best player in that deal to get Edmonds. But, and that says something, but that we kind of, as the fans, we kind of expect, like, well, yeah, just go trade for that frontline starter. What do you give up? Okay, fine. Give up Tink Hence and go get get Paul Skeens over here. Obviously an exaggeration, but I always wonder sometimes if we've just been too spoiled with being able to pull the wool over people's eyes, and it's a completely different game in a lot of respects now than it was back then. And, especially with like the Arenado and the Goldschmidt contracts, as those caliber players, it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah. I mean, fans are always terrible about figuring out what the value is. I mean, we've seen it over the last couple of years. This idea that Jack Flaherty might bring you back, some frontline, prospect talent, and like I said, the three guys that he got that came back in his trade are now all out of the organization. There are times we, kind of thought Ryan Helsley might bring back a decent amount, and maybe, I mean, those returns aren't in yet, but it wasn't anything that was like, oh, you were getting a team's top, one of their top 10 pitching prospects or something of that nature back. That didn't happen like that.
Yeah,
so,
and that's what I thought with when the Brewers traded Devin Williams and what they got for him. That was my thought process, is that the Cardinals were shopping Helsley, and I just think that they thought that they could get more, and just the market wasn't there. But
yeah, because that Devin Williams trade didn't look, at the time especially, didn't look like it was like, oh, okay, yeah, if they're getting that for him, you're probably not getting what you want for Ryan Helsley. So yeah, I mean, we don't know, and there's the difference of need at the trade deadline and things of that nature. But yeah, I think it's an interesting call for Heim. And I mean, I still think that the minor leagues needs more of an influx of talent. Maybe not as much, depending on how the trade, this draft goes and how some of these guys develop. and the fact that this is a very young team, obviously. So, some of these guys are going to be around for a while. But maybe it's a you keep O'Brien and you worry about, trade him in the off season if you really think that you still want to trade him, and worry about it then. I don't know. I think it's going to be. I'm glad that we're talking about this, right? I mean, because we expected this time to be, listing out, well, let's see if Dustin May can continue to build up his trade value. And now I think
we could have been talking over under on what day they start the fire sale starts.
Exactly. And now we're to the point where, because Dustin May seems to like to be here, do they even? I mean, does he stay the whole year? I mean, that doesn't mean either side, picks up the option or whatever, but does he stay the whole year? I mean, I don't think, beginning of the year, like there's no way. He either pitches well enough that he gets traded or he pitches bad enough he gets released. Yeah. And now it's like, well, I mean, if they don't get what they want for him, or maybe they don't want to disturb a rotation that, doesn't necessarily have, Dobbins is available, but, as of right now, if you took May out of that and put Dobbins in, then you have nobody as depth. And, so it may be where they may kind of get painted themselves into a quarter a little bit there too.
Like we were saying, they're good problems to have. Good problems to have.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, what would you see at this point with this record and this team? In your mind, is this already a success, or what needs to happen for you to say this was a successful Cardinals season?
Boy, it's hard to say it's not, right? I mean, I guess if they just completely cratered and they still only won like 60 games or something then. But even then, I think unless Jordan Walker looks like a mirage, which that doesn't, I mean, he's already hit more home runs this year than he has the last 2 years combined. He's obviously made adjustments. So, I mean, I feel confident in saying, and we'll see, but I feel confident in saying you've gotten Jordan Walker on track. That could be enough to make the season valuable, even though it is. And like you said, if McGreevy keeps this up and is figuring a way to outpitch his metrics, it could be your 3 or 4 when you get these guys like Liam Doyle or Quinn Matthews or others up in the system. That's a win too. So, I mean, when you're looking at it at a development point of view, it's hard to, unless something just really goes bad right now, I think you're looking at this is probably a successful season.
Yeah, I agree. I'm loving it. I'm having so much fun. I've gotten to go to a couple games all year so far this year, and I've been surprised, to be honest, that and I admittedly went more earlier in the year that there were. I went to the Mariners game, and there were definitely a lot of Mariners fans. And I went to a Guardians game, and it almost seemed like there were more Guardians fans than Cardinal fans. But that was a middle of the afternoon game. But the crowds are coming back. Yeah, it's fun to be down at the ballpark again.
If you were to say right now, I mean, knowing what banked, well, everything's banked, whatever. What do you think their final record will be now?
I'm gonna, if you allow me a range,
sure,
a broad range, I would say 75 to 85 wins. I know that's a pretty broad.
That's range. A pretty broad range. You're right, but I'll grant it.
I would still guess that they finish around 500 this year.
Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think at the end of April, my brother was showing me that like Baseball Reference had them playing like 15 under 500 the rest of the way, and they obviously have done better than that projection. But I think around 500. I think that's where I would see.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, it's hard for me to say more. I'd like to, but I'm looking right now. Fangraphs has them at 26.3% chance of winning the Central. No, making the playoffs. Sorry. So, I mean, that's a lot better than it was. Um, it is just, yeah, it is still hard to quite fathom this idea that they could win, especially when they're going to start playing the inside the division. They've played a lot of American League teams, and for some reason, the American League is terrible this year.
Yeah.
So, in theory, the competition steps up, but then again, they swept Pittsburgh. They took 2 out of 3 for Los Angeles. They played San Diego as well as you could play them. So even if they start moving into the National League, it doesn't feel like they're going to necessarily just, all of a sudden they're going to get exposed.
Yeah. Speaking of the American League, did you see that stat about Tampa Bay, that their record versus the American League compared to their record versus the NL Central?
I saw that about. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think
I think it was that they're like I'm probably gonna get it wrong, but it's something like they're 18-2 against the American League and 6-15 against or 5-15 against the NL Central.
Yeah.
Pretty good run for the NL Central.
And that's the other that is a bit of the frustrating thing, right? I had a message from my Gateway co-host David Jones earlier today, where he was like, everybody in the National League Central is already winning, and the Cardinals haven't even started yet. As well as they have played, it has been hard for them to gain much ground on a division that somehow is like the best division of baseball.
I know, as much as I hated to see it, I saw I had to chuckle that somebody was talking about the Cubs, that if the Cubs continue their path of winning 10 games in a row and then losing 3 games in a row, they will make the World Series, but then lose the World Series.
I hate for them to make it, but I'd hate for them to win it more. So I guess we would take that. So insufferable. It's been fun. Again, it's Portion Under Busch at Substack. If you're not reading it, check it out. There's a lot of really good articles there. And look forward to the next quarterly installments. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on you'd like to hit on before we leave it up?
No, just thank you again. Like I said, we talked about at the beginning, and we're going to talk about Cardinals. Some of our Cardinals who it has not been baseball heaven for, and then a couple other issues coming up is we're going to have one on people who grew up in St. Louis and became Cardinals. We kind of talked about that dream that people had. So that'll be a fun issue. We're going to actually talk to Jerry Royce, who pitched for the Cardinals in the 60s, and obviously the great Dodger pitcher and great announcer. But he grew up in St. Louis, and then another issue we're going to talk about some closers, kind of based on this issue or this team that we were talking about with the bullpen problems, putting things in perspective about other relievers who have struggled. And I talked recently to a guy that diehard fans might know. His name is Tom Bruno. He pitched for the Cardinals in the late 70s, and just talked to him about what it was like kind of coming out of the bullpen and on a team that did not do great. Probably one of the least successful Cardinal teams ever was the 1978 squad. And so he talked a little bit about that. And he had a great story about his childhood friend who also played for the Cardinals in the minor league system. He said a guy by the name of Randy Poffo. And he's like, Randy Poffo and I, we always played, his dad threw us batting practice every day. We were great friends. And my mind was blown because I grew up in the 80s and I know Randy Poffo by the name of the Macho Man Randy Savage. So he probably didn't realize it, but I talked probably way too long asking for stories about the Macho Man. So that one might not be as detailed about the Cardinals and more just stories about watching the Macho Man wrestle. But
I mean, that is an interesting connection that the Cardinals have had. That and Tony Danza's character on Who's the
Boss?
Who's the Boss was a Cardinal minor leaguer. It's often weird when these things have popped up, but that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Look forward to those as well. And again, it's been a lot of fun. We'll do it again.
Thank you so much. I really always enjoy it. And so it's always good seeing you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yep. Blogger Day should be a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing everybody there. And we'll have a lot of good stories and information when we come out of that.
And I'll
Next
leave
week,
the sport jacket at home.
Yeah, yeah. Eugene was won best dressed last year at Blogger Day. He didn't realize the slobs that we usually are, so he's gonna have to dress down for us this year. Next week we have JD Norton or JD Heffron from Locked On Cardinals. Look forward to talking to him. And until then, for Eugene, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
0-1 to Pujols. In the air, left field, and Pujols has given St. Louis the lead. A dramatic, towering 3-run home run. Stunned in disbelief here.